Hey, hi, hello, and welcome to my beauty industry enthusiasts, content creators, and brand visionaries. Get ready to step into a world where beauty meets business, where the creator economy blends seamlessly with strategy. I'm Sonia Anise, and this is Lipservice, the podcast. We're about to redefine the way that you think about the beauty industry. From the boardroom to the makeup room, we're leaving no stone unturned. Lipservice is your backstage pass to the beauty industry's best kept secrets. Now take out your notebook, fill up your emotional support water bottle, and swipe on your favorite lip gloss. Let's get into the episode. Well, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm so excited. Today we have Rachel Anise with us, better known as Beauty Professor. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast, Rachel. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Sonia. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Absolutely.
I know it's going to be good.
I know. I'm very excited. Well, we always start every episode with a breakdown of what is on your face today.
I'm so glad I was conscious of putting on what I did so I can answer this question so clearly. I am wearing just a 5-minute face, which is almost always my go-to. My feeling is if you can't get ready in 5 to 7 minutes, that's just not for me.
Yeah.
In any context, I'm always in a rush. So I am wearing a Revive vitamin C serum. I'm on my second or third bottle. It's my daytime go-to. And then I have an SPF that's tinted from Sarah Creel, who is a beauty industry icon. She just launched her own eponymous brand called Sarah Creel Beauty, but she's helped launch Victoria Beckham Beauty and a bunch of other incredible beauty brands. That's how we met. We met via Victoria. But her new line just launched, and it is dedicated or focused on a more middle-aged women demographic, which I think is really smart and interesting. And her tinted SPF is beautiful and mineral, which I love. Nice. And then I have some Swede glass skin foundation. Do you know the brand Swede? Love it. I think it's making such a meaningful debut in the US beauty space. It's had a lot of European presence, but now it's here and I love it. And the foundation's great. And then I'm wearing nothing on my eyes. I've been skipping eyeshadow for the whole summer and it's so freeing. Honestly, I like eyeshadow, but I'm like nothing. Some mascara by Iris and Romeo, some brow gel by Make, which is my go-to. And it's a very good hold. And I put it on one time and I never think about it again. And then bronzer is YSL today, which is one of my favorites, along with the Sisley bronzer. And then blush is two blushes from Lawless. One is the Angel shade and one is Gumdrop. One's a pink, one's kind of like a beigey pink nude. And I just mix them. It's a cream blush formula. So easy, so pretty. Just put it on.
Nice.
Lips, Wherever Walnut by Makeup Forever.
Have
How
to.
can you not? I feel late to the game on that one because it took me a long time to try that specific shade. And then it arrived in the mail and I was like, oh, now I get it. Okay. So
where have I been? Why was I sleeping on this?
Right? Now I understand. And then I have a lip color that I did with Au Naturel. It's called I did 2 with them, LA and Trench Coat, and they just are relaunching again this summer. So I have them and I just popped them on today. They're creamy mattes, so clean you can eat them. And then I also have a lip color I can't talk about yet, but it's a collab with another brand coming out in a few months. It's the shiny version, the shiny stuff on top. Love this color, so pigment rich. And that's a really long, protracted answer you might not have been expecting. But I'm passionate about this stuff, so there you go.
No, I think the listeners want to know. We love the details. And you named so many brands I feel like people don't normally name. So I'm very excited to check those out.
Hooray. That makes me happy. I always like to highlight the things that I'm loving. Thank you.
Of course. And another question I always like to ask our guests is where are you finding inspiration right now?
I felt extremely inspired. I was in Europe for about 3 weeks last month and got back. And anytime I go there, I always come out feeling very refreshed. I mean, exhausted on one front because there's a lot of traveling. We took our 5-year-old daughter this time around, which was amazing, but definitely we were moving fast and getting up early and going to bed late. And we went a lot of places within Europe. So, maximized our trip. But between, the architecture and just like what being immersed in another way of living, I feel like I always feel inspired on that front.
Yeah.
I also feel like it was very validating for what I've been embracing lately, which is way less makeup. I've never worn a lot, but I think I've worn more that you can see. And I think in Europe, I just kind of pared down what I was doing and I've stuck with it. And it's been really nice. So that was something inspiring. I also am forever inspired by like 1960s, 1970s fashion. So that's what my go-to. I'm reading a bunch of books in that vein right now. So
amazing. Yes, I definitely think travel is such a great answer in terms of inspiration.
Yes.
Even if you don't go as far as Europe, anytime you can get out of like your day to day and kind of shake it up. So helpful for inspiration. So sounds
nice
like
reset.
A lovely trip for you.
It was. My husband had business meetings. I had business meetings, and mine were all, of course, beauty related. He works in another industry. And so my daughter was able to come with me to all of mine, which was so special. Yes. I think she's been, going to beauty events since she was 3 weeks old, but this was, I think she's in a different headspace now. We're sitting through a 2-hour lunch meeting and being able to really soak it in a meaningful way. So we had made some great memories.
Fantastic. Yes. She's definitely your mini you. I'm sure everyone tells you you're like little twins because the eyes, they're so identical. Right. It's so sweet. I love it.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. She's such a joy.
Amazing. And then the very last question, which is a hard one, so take your time.
Okay.
But if you were visiting the afterworld tomorrow, you're done on this plane and you go to wherever you imagine the next place is, what one product do you take with you?
Oh my gosh. That's a wild question.
I know.
Okay. So if I was going to heaven, I would be bringing, I think just being in the moment, and being capricious about it, I would bring this new lip product that I've been creating for almost a year that I told you I can't tell you about because I feel like it's too soon to say goodbye. We haven't launched it yet.
Okay.
So I would want that. And it would be a very close tie. So that would be like a makeup item. And if I could just throw in a skincare and hair item, it would be a product I'm developing in my hair care range that I use every single day. No matter what. And once again, it hasn't launched yet. So I would want it with me because it's a perennial daily favorite and it's just too soon to say goodbye.
Okay.
It's so good. I can't wait to share it.
Those make sense. Okay. I can't wait to dive in on your new journey with the hair care launch as well. So
thank you.
Let's get into the episode. So Rachel, love, first, I know you're doing so much right now. Mom, entrepreneur, you're about to launch a hair care line, professor at a university, full-time content creation, YouTube, all the things. Can you back up and just tell us a little bit about when did you get started and just some of the highlights to today?
Sure. So I started Beauty Professor one winter break while I was a college professor back in 2012. So this was a very different landscape in terms of what beauty looked like, what content creation, which wasn't even like a word in our lexicon in the same way back then. I was inspired by some like old school beauty blogs of that time. And I decided, I had at that point taking that back further, I paid my way through college and grad school by modeling. And I was always, when I was on set, I was so fascinated by the makeup that was being applied to my face. And that was really more interesting to me than any other part of the experience. So I'm very grateful. It was a good means to an end for me to get through school without debt.
Yeah.
I was fascinated by the makeup element. And I would ask makeup artists so many questions and I was fascinated by the products they were using. And I had zero disposable income to buy anything. All my money went to books and tuition. So every semester. So when I started finally teaching and working and I had some disposable income, I started buying kind of niche, hard to find makeup items that I had never been able to buy before. And then I wrote a public speaking textbook with another professor early in my career and went through like 2 years of that process. And I had this excess writing energy. I started Beauty Professor one winter break. We're back to that point. And I had amassed at that point some interesting stuff that I thought, well, if I like it, maybe other people will want to read about it too. So I started just swatching and doing in-depth reviews. And I had lots of writing under my belt at that point. So my articles were pretty intense on that front. And I found an audience early on. I didn't expect it. I didn't plan for it. I had no idea it would ever be a business. I thought about the name Beauty Professor just as like an amalgamation of my two worlds, beauty and being a professor. But little did I know that would be my, a significant part of my life going forward. So I started the blog, and that's what we call them, a blog.
Yep.
And I knew nothing. I didn't know about coding. I was a terrible photographer, but I learned about all of that as the school of Google. And
of course,
I would say within a year and a half, my site was getting a lot more traffic than I realized. And I started to have brands reach out to me.
Wow.
And then I learned about monetization and started working with LTK. Within a year of their existence, they reached out and said, you could be, you're linking all this stuff already. You might as well be using affiliate links.
Exactly.
I was just courtesy linking. So it happened fairly quickly for me on that front. And it's been a long climb and lots of hustle and time for a decade plus. And that's kind of the story of how that happened. And then I just started expanding my channels as the years went on. So
wow.
That's how Beauty Professor was born. And I've just really worked hard to keep it alive and growing, and always, above all things, make it a resource for people. That's what I want.
Nice. I love that journey. And I love that you mentioned that you had no experience with,
Zero.
so many things, and you just Googled it. And so many people today, I think to themselves, I don't know how to video edit. I don't know how to do this. And truly, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You can do it still.
You'll figure it out. You figure it out. Absolutely. I mean, down to trademarking Beauty Professor, which I did back in 2014. I had the foresight to do that. And I figured out how to do that. I mean, I thought I could hire an attorney, or I can just spend, this is before having a child, so I had a little more time. A little more unobstructed focus.
Sure.
And I went through it all for about a month and a half until I felt like everything was right. And then I submitted it and got it approved, and have maintained that mark ever since. But even something like that, I feel like there's so much information out there. And if you can really stay focused and stay confident in your ability to kind of metabolize it, you can get a lot done on your own.
Absolutely, for sure. I think it's people see growth, let's say even of a channel like yours, and they say, oh, I want to be there, but it's so much stuff. Well, it took you 12 years to get to now.
12 years.
You didn't do it all at once. Nobody launches a blog and a YouTube and, an email newsletter, everything at the same time. That's impossible. That's just not a good strategy.
I think so. Unless you have a whole team behind you doing their respective parts, I would think it's impossible.
Yeah.
Yes.
Speaking of team, do you have team now that helps you out?
I do. Well, on a grand front, I have a very supportive family, and that is my team as needed.
Yeah.
So my mom has been my rock in Beauty Professor since the beginning. I mean, once I realized I needed help on shooting pictures of myself, because I was doing so many campaigns where I like to show makeup on my face. No, I don't have Photoshop. I just look for very good light, because you want optimal light. But she would shoot everything of the products on my face, and still does. And so I shoot everything else. And then obviously phone content, I can shoot myself. But she has been my photographer for all these years. And we work really well together. We can crank out a lot of content quickly, and because we're very direct. She'll be like, you'll hate that face, fix it. There's no pretense. She's very honest. She loves me. I know she's looking out for me. And so we can just get through it fast. So she's been my biggest team member all these years, and has come with me to so many events, come with me on so many hosting opportunities, where I've been shooting at QVC. She comes and does my hair and makeup. So we've been a great team. She knows my business inside and out.
Wow.
And then my husband is extremely supportive on all fronts. Sometimes he has to step in and take pics for me, and he requires direction, but he's learned it over the years.
He's a good sport.
Always.
That's always so great.
He knows now. He knows the angles now a lot more. So
that's lovely.
But that's it. No, I'm pretty much running all of those elements myself.
Wow.
By choice.
Amazing. Yes. That's an incredible amount of work, but it's so nice that you have, family support and people helping you out, because you can't do it alone.
Well, and No, and the trust is essential. Like my family are my best friends, and my mom has handled the bookkeeping side of things for me for years. I mean, keep from a tax standpoint, keeping track of all of that meticulously is such a blessing. And
Wow.
you can't, when it comes to very transparently, when it comes to money stuff, it's really hard to know who to trust and who not to
Of
trust. And
course.
she's someone I trust implicitly and always have. So it's great that we have that. She's been my assistant. She's been more than that in so many different ways. And I'm just grateful for that. We've watched this
Amazing.
whole business grow together.
That's beautiful. And now you're bringing your daughter along. So you're really going generational.
Yes. It does feel that way. It does.
That's great. And so looking past 12 years, when you look back, what are some like milestones, product collabs, or events that you went to, or just moments where you're like, wow, like I've really done this?
I've had a lot of those thoughts over the years. I wish I would have just written them all down. I mean, I write them in a planner. I journal every single day, but I've got, decades and decades of stuff that only I would probably want to read. But I would have to review those. I think that sometimes when I realize, well, there's a few things. One, just the sheer amount of press I receive at my house. And I mean it in the most awestruck way. It's like, it's not self-aggrandizing. I'm not boasting. I'm grateful. And I marvel regularly, like 12 years of beauty writing on so many fronts, and the ability to be able to just have things arrive to your door. You don't even know it. And it's there, and you get to test it in advance and work with it. That is something that I don't take for granted ever. It's a responsibility. And I do feel like a museum. I feel like a museum curator a lot of the time, trying to do right by the stuff that's here. I mean, you can't see behind me right now, but I was gone for almost a month. The amount of stuff that has arrived while I was away that I still haven't moved through the way I like to, it's intense. But that is something that I think is not, it's not normal.
Sure.
It's not a normal thing in a job. And I tell my daughter that all the time, like being on a very close first name basis, know their lives inside and out with your delivery guys, that's not normal. I mean, because we see them so much and they know what I do, and there's a beautiful relationship there. But I tell her all the time, like, most people don't have 7 packages a day arriving at their house. Like, that's not normal.
Sure.
So that's one thing. And I think another is just, beautiful collaborations I've been able to do with brands I love. Everything for me has to be on brand. It has to feel organic. I have to have given a brand earned media before I ever work with them on a paid capacity, just from an integrity standpoint. And so getting to work with brands I love, like Nordstrom and Neiman's and Sephora as like retailers. And then of course, brands themselves, Clé de Peau, Orbe, brands I've loved forever, Le Métier de Beauté, brands I've loved forever. Getting to work with them on a business front is just incredible. So, and events are great. Don't get me wrong. I could recap those all day, but I think the most gratifying part about those is watching founders that at their beginning are just burgeoning, right? And watching their brands come into their own and being like, yeah, I was around at the very beginning. That's amazing. So it's just encouraging to see growth like that in a firsthand way.
Oh, that's so nice. And I'm really glad that you touched on the fact that you really prioritize brand partnerships where you've given organic coverage and then they've grown into something bigger. Can you highlight something like how that unfurls? I feel like a lot of our listeners are, of course, creators, and most of them are early on and are excited about the journey. So they'd love to know like the behind the scenes of, is it PR? Were you invited to an event? And then kind of how did that progress?
Yes, I think that beauty, well, I can only speak to the beauty industry, but it probably applies to most verticals, right? I think that it's so relationship based. Partnerships often, and there are those few partnerships that come where you actually never meet the people that you work with. Like, that exists as well. But a lot of it is relationship based. And so showing up to things when you can, and really, I think curating your ability to show up too, because if you're on deadline for things, it's really hard to show up to everything. And I live in LA, so there's a lot of events close by for me that I get invited to, and showing up to everything means I can't get any work done.
Yeah.
There's only so much time in the day. So you really have to kind of like prioritize where you know you can give that time spent, develop that
Mm-hmm.
relationship, nurture it. And so I do think it's important to show your face, be around, enjoy those relationships. It's always invigorating. You feel energized. And then being really on it when it comes to email. So responsive, quick, polite, error free. You'd think that's a given across for everyone, but it's
Yeah.
not. And
No.
so I think when you can be that reliable person
Mm-hmm.
that's on time, that's on deadline, that turns things in when they say they will. I used to think that those were things everyone was doing, but I've learned in
Mm-hmm.
my career that's not the case. So
So
when you
true.
can be that consistent, trustworthy person that's
Mm-hmm.
going to do what they say, I think that makes a big difference when it comes to being considered for brand partnerships.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree. I think I've been in the industry for about a decade, and I think part of the
Okay.
reason why there has been a lot of negative communication around influencers is because of a lack of experience for so many of them in quote unquote real world, right?
Right.
Your day to day 9 to 5 corporate jobs or any type of full time career position. And that's not something that's against them. They truly are just young, right? So many content
Right.
creators
They're
are young.
inexperienced.
Exactly. And that's why I see
Right.
so many really great creators who are late 30s, 40s, and above because they've had careers, they understand the
Right.
business element of things, and they know, just like you're talking about, relationship building, community, responding to emails, business acumen. And that's a huge
Right.
piece of the pie here for sure.
It's significant. And some of that comes from, perhaps your background, your career, your previous career.
Mm-hmm.
And some of it just comes from an ability to commit to being consistent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not fun. I will spend a lot of time responding to email late at night, foregoing sleep, however that has to be in order to, I think, be that person that is responsive in a world where things can be flaky. And like I said, that's not just specific to beauty, but in general,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's hard for humans to be consistent. It's a daily challenge, even
Oh,
if that's something you
100%.
prioritize. It's work.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it comes down to mindset. Is that the way you want to be as a person?
Mm-hmm.
Then it will take sacrifice, but I do think the payoff is inherent.
Yeah, 100%. And I think so many creators are looking to onboard management to take that off
Yes.
their plate. They think, oh, I'll get a manager and then they'll do all the emailing for me. But clearly you are doing it yourself. And I'm sure you can
Yes.
speak to the fact that you are getting much closer relationships because you're that person
Right.
on the other end.
Right. It's a trade-off, as many things are.
Yeah.
I've been approached by managers many times over and agencies over the years.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's fascinating that I feel like I've lived in the age where that didn't exist and
Mm-hmm.
now it does.
Yeah.
It's a thing, and
Mm-hmm.
like without unequivocally so,
For
right?
sure.
But to watch that just kind of come out of thin air to appear. But I've had good talks with managers. I have friends who are managers, and I appreciate that space. I see its utility. For me personally, from a relational standpoint, and full transparency, a lot of managers want you to hand over your contact list.
Yeah.
And I get it because they need to be responding. They're getting your whole inbox.
Sure.
My inbox is 12 years of relationships in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I value those. It's not just like I want to keep them for myself. I'm always happy to make a connection when someone asks, like happy
Mm-hmm.
to make that. But it's about like not being a part of that anymore. You hand that
Yeah.
over to someone else and you're out of the equation. And those are 12 years of relationships, friendships that
Yeah.
I'm not ready to
Yeah.
abandon in that way
I
for
agree.
the sake of getting some time back.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I don't mind negotiating directly. I teach negotiation. So it's something that I don't, once again, not always fun. It's actually not fun a lot of the
Sure.
time, but
Mm-hmm.
it's something I've had a lot of experience with. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel differently about that at this stage of the game
Mm-hmm.
than deferring that to an agent or a manager. But I get why people do that because it's not a skill set people feel super comfortable with a lot of the time.
Truly. And I love that you brought that up because maybe you can give the audience a few key tips about negotiating. What are some of your like must-haves, confidence builders? I, as well, when I mentor the creators, I'm always saying like, why not ask? Why not? There's a professional way to ask for everything. Let's ask.
True. Why not?
What are some of your key tips for people?
I think the first would be to make it your business to really understand who you're negotiating with. Mm-hmm. I think we need to understand who that is. And if it's a who, like an individual, mm-hmm. or who is a company, what's their business background? What's your take on what their budget is if they're not being transparent about it up front? I mean, sometimes it's easy. A brand will say like, this is our budget. Can we find a place to meet? And those are easier because you know what you're working with. Mm-hmm. But a lot of negotiations are not so direct. And I think, the way that you can kind of suss out, okay, this is a huge brand. I'm going to assume they've got a lot more budget to work with mm-hmm. than a brand new brand that is working its way into the industry. Mm-hmm. It's not a one size fits all approach is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. What you might do or concede to with a smaller brand that mm-hmm. is just getting in there, if you feel passionately behind it and you want to help catalyze it out into the world, mm-hmm. you might be willing to accept less in that situation, understanding the context of that brand than you would for a larger brand that has a more developed or advanced budget. So that's one thing. And that's on us as the creators to mm-hmm. kind of go, what can I find out? Mm-hmm. How can I, once again, go to the school of Google, start reading, figure that out. And then once you have that information, I think it comes down to understanding that negotiation is a dance, right? Mm-hmm. Hopefully a friendly dance. Mm-hmm. I always look for a win-win-win is what I like to say. Mm-hmm. Any brand deal needs to be a win for me on a business level. Like it needs to feel fair. I don't ever need to, I had this conversation with someone yesterday. We were in negotiation mode actually. And I said, I don't want to feel like, whoa, I just got so much more than I would have taken for this. Mm-hmm. That's never my goal. I want to feel like I'm being compensated fairly.
Sure.
Fairly plus. Fairly mm-hmm. plus is nice, but fairly, right? I mean, it should feel right for the work I'm doing. So it needs to be a win for me on that front. It needs to be a win for the brand. They need to feel like whatever their spend is giving them ROI on whatever it is. Maybe it's brand recognition. Maybe it's customer acquisition. Maybe it's direct conversion. Always be clear about what it is they're looking for because mm-hmm. those are different things at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. And then it needs to be a win. And this is what I think gets overlooked. It needs to be a win for the audience that's being targeted.
Yes.
I want my loyal followers, all of whom are real. Mm-hmm. Never bought a follower, never bought a like, never bought a view, mm-hmm. never was in an engagement pod. I don't play that game, probably mm-hmm. to my detriment, but I won't do it. Just will not do it. Diametrically opposed. My followers are real people who've been with me for so long. I want to be delivering something useful, resourceful, helpful for them.
Yeah.
So I need to be able to create content that speaks to that objective mm-hmm. and that they come out of that if they watch that content with something that was good that they didn't have before they watched it. Every party needs to win in that negotiation. And so like a piece of how that might not work is if a brand says, I want for you to do 3 reels on this one product in a matter of a month. I mean, this is a real life scenario.
Sure.
And I will say no to that. It doesn't matter how good the money is because that's annoying for our audience. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm like, they will be annoyed by halfway through reel number 2 a week later. Like you can't, I know them. I feel it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter how much money I'm being offered. I won't do that to my followers. Mm-hmm. And it's not good for the brand. And it's certainly not good for me. It's bad for everyone.
And let me guess, you come back with a solution. Like, how about we do 3 reels that do this? Yes.
How about we do 3 reels in 3 months? Yeah. How about that? Mm-hmm. That it's a time thing. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But to saturate someone in a mm-hmm. tight period of time, which sometimes brands want, I will not do it. Mm-hmm. And I've said no to deals that are hard to say no to, but I've said no many times because mm-hmm. sometimes they don't want to budge. And I'm like, then I'm not your girl. Mm-hmm. Like I wish you the absolute best, but I'm not the person to do this job. Yeah. Because it has to be a win-win-win.
Yeah. And you have to be willing to walk away because when it doesn't hit those, you have to know that then what you're up against is, okay, well, I can execute this, but either metrics are not going to be good, engagement is not going to be good, something on the output at the very end is not going to be what you guys paid for.
Correct. And I know that enough having done this for so long. It's the same reason why a dedicated video on YouTube is a huge challenge. If it's one product or a couple products from one brand on YouTube, it's a hard sell most of the time because it feels like no matter how you try to approach it like a commercial.
Yeah.
And people don't
Makes
like
sense.
that. I've done dedicated videos when for example, I worked with Lima on a long-term project, the Lima laser. Love it. By the way, use it daily. Have used it for 6 months. But to do a dedicated follow-up video on, hey, I've been using this for 4 months. Here are my results. That's something people want to see. That's something I want to watch.
Sure.
Show me the journey.
Yeah.
That's not a commercial. That's extremely informative. But a lot of single brand product YouTube asks are not like that. So they do feel like a commercial and no one wants that. It's just not going to do well for anyone.
Well, I think that this was probably the most informative and powerful part of this whole podcast so far. So I hope everyone was taking notes, because I think that even just understanding that win-win-win strategy is something that as a marketer, I think if I was approaching a creator of any size and they came back and they said, listen, I want to make sure that everybody wins and this doesn't feel like my audience is winning enough, then I'm like, wow, they're really thinking this through. They have a plan.
Right.
I love it.
And I will say this, thank you so much. I will say it becomes easier to abandon the third win objective if any portion of your audience is not real. And I think you know where I stand on this. I'm pretty transparent about it to anyone who will ask, but there's a lot less stress with sponsored content if you're purchasing large parts of your audience, even 30 to 50%, which a lot of people do. I mean, a lot of people do it. And you're not going to overthink how it hits, because these aren't real people, real people to you or real people at all.
Yeah.
And so that's a totally different dynamic than when you are sharing sponsored content with an audience that's been with you, that is real and responsive and will ask questions and give you feedback. Very different situations.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, such good information for everybody. I'm so glad they got those nuggets. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Moving into how you knew it was time to start a brand. Huge undertaking, especially in the beauty world, especially in hair care. Tell me more. I mean, I think you're probably very well known for your hair. You have the most gorgeous hair. I'm sure people tell you all the time.
Thank you so much.
Which is probably the lead into I can do something with this. Tell us more.
I get a lot of questions about my hair. What do I use? What do I do? So I field a lot of questions. I do on a personal level, a personal note. As it pertains to hair, I do believe in an inside-outside approach. So what you're consuming has a lot to do with the integrity of your hair health, and also obviously what you're using. That's just a quick take on that. Definitely could tackle that further if we have time. But beyond that, I feel so blessed to have been able to have done some really special collaborations with brands over the years. I've worked with, like I said, Le Métier de Beauté. I've worked with Au Naturel on multiple very hands-on product development situations. And we have more in the pipeline, which is exciting. I have worked with Galactic, which is a really special independent beauty brand based out of LA, which I love. And I feel like anytime I have come up with a product with a brand, I pour my heart into it. And I am also grateful for the fact that I'm working with brands that have the resources to bring that product to fruition.
Yeah.
So, in the back of my mind, I was always driven by this idea of, starting a line of sorts. But I see, as much as I love color cosmetics and will never tire of creating things, I see how hard it is from a business standpoint to bring a lot of color to the market and in any capacity on your own.
Yeah.
So I knew, and there's a lot out there I love already, or that I'm working on making. So that was something that got me really thinking about hair care. Like, okay, what do I wish existed in a specific form that does not yet exist? And those are the two products I'm coming to market with my brand. and they are not shampoo and conditioner, because there's a lot of good ones out there.
Yeah.
I've got a veritable cathedral of shampoo and conditioner on rotation, brands I love. But I feel like these two specific products are things that I wish existed in the form I've created them in. I keep looking this way because I have a lab sample on my table right now. So
she's peeking.
I see you. Yeah.
I love it.
And I feel like we nailed it. I mean, it's been a year of development, and these are not white label products. They're starting from complete scratch.
Wow.
Oh, we had nothing and have something amazing now, but minimalist ingredients from a minimal ingredients list, clean, really effective. And best of all, they are products you can use, like all hair types can use every day without weigh down, which is my biggest issue with hair products, because you put it in, you get results, and then you're like, ugh, I got to wash my hair the next day.
Yep.
You don't have to do that with these, and they are so good.
So excited
that's where I'm
for
at.
you. And what's the ETA on launch?
Okay, so it could be as soon as Q4 of this year, or between Q4 of this year, I think, God willing, or Q1 of 25. I think we're somewhere there. The formulas are going into stability testing right now. There's really no expectation for them not to be stable. They've got very reasonable ingredients, but then it's really just finalizing the manufacturing and getting them in there, and then working on those final pieces to get it into the hands of the public, which is just very business oriented. So working on that, but I was talking with a friend of mine this last week, Robin of Beauty is Boring. She's incredible makeup artist, photographer. I mean, she does it all and does it so well. And I was saying, we were talking about this, my line, and I said, I have no set timeline. Like, I don't. I just want to feel productive every day. So am I doing something every day to move forward a little bit? Sometimes you're moving more forward than other days, but always moving forward. And I'm on God's time. Like, when it's right to happen, it will happen. And there's no need. I'm self-funding, so I'm not beholden to any investors. I'm not beholden to any outside forces. It's terrifying. But at the same time, I have an abundance of freedom.
Yeah.
So in terms of my timing, so I am just taking the time to get it exactly where I need it to be. So
good for you.
It'll be ready when it's ready.
I know. Well, there's definitely, the best thing is to not rush, even though it's difficult because you want it out in the world. Rushed launch is never a good idea.
Never good. No. And I think you rush because of external factors a lot of times. You've got people demanding something of you. I mean, we've all done it. I do that with deadlines sometimes. Like, I got to get this done. And even sometimes with your own creative work, it can be a motivating factor, and your work comes out really well because you are just like under the gun. But I don't think with a product line, that's a good dynamic. So
for sure.
I'm taking my time.
Good for you. And so as a creator who's launching a brand, do you have an idea of what your creator strategy will be for getting support for the line?
Oh, such a good question. I do. And it's really just based on my own experience as somebody who's supported a lot of brands in her lifetime.
Sure.
So I've seen what a term I'm making up right now, but what flagrant seeding can do when it comes to sending things out. Like, everybody gets a whole bunch. And I feel like, and when it's not thoughtful, when it's not precise, you're just missing out on some benefits you can get when you are thoughtful and precise.
Sure.
So even with brands I've worked with on collabs, when I have a press list of people that I love their work, we have a good relationship. I mean, I'm always grateful for any press you get based off of a press sample. So brands will send out my lip color launch or a kit I'm working on. And when people in my beauty space who I love and respect create content just because they like it, I'm like, oh, that's the best feeling.
Absolutely.
And so you look for that on one front, like mutually supportive, reciprocal relationships. But I do think that approach of sending everything out to everyone is, unless you've got endless funds, is pretty risky. And just knowing the amount of things people get, something could sit in a box for a few months and not even get opened, much less discussed. So that's one thing. It's just being really thoughtful about your press list. And then I do feel like when it comes to any kind of gifting you add in with your product,
Mm-hmm.
including a product, like an ancillary product that is immediately useful to people is so much better than something gimmicky or cute.
Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think about this just personally based on the press that I receive. And I'm like, what things stand out to me that I'm like, cool, I want this thing. I'm popping this hat on my head, or I'm
Mm-hmm.
using this whatever right away, versus stuff that I'm like, oh, that's like a nice thought, but what
Yeah.
do I do
Am I
with
going to
this? You
really
know what I'm
use this?
saying?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I know that awareness will guide me when it comes to picking what that perfect companion piece will be in a
Sure.
send out.
Mm. Well, it sounds like a very exciting time, and I like that strategy. I've seen a lot of strategies, but I feel like that's a good idea. So
Thank
it has
you.
my stamp of approval for if that means
I
anything.
appreciate it. Yeah, it does. Absolutely. Thank you.
Of course.
Mm.
Okay. So I want to go back a little bit into community and having this like long journey online. I think a lot of people, especially after 10 plus years, have some lessons learned when it comes to negativity, positivity, engagement. How do you approach the space when it comes to any of those things, like getting your truest fans to really engage on something without it feeling icky? But also, if there is negativity, how do you sort of deflect?
Yes. I feel like you have to have a thick skin in this business because you're putting yourself out there. I mean, your literal face out there for people to dissect, and everyone's got an opinion. And sometimes even people that have supported you will say wild things, and you're like, wait, what?
I thought we were
you're
friends.
not going to be right. Like, you're not going to be for everyone on all fronts based on your aesthetic choices ever. And I've learned that. I'm like looking at my hands because I have like shorter natural nails right now. I do them myself, but I also have had much longer natural nails. And even something as inconsequential as that, some of my followers will be like, I don't like your nails long. They don't look classy or whatever. They're like my nails, like they're growing out of my hands, but you have an opinion on this. And I'm like, well, I like them. You know, I might say that if it's someone I know, and I'm just like, whatever, like to each their, that's my statement, to each their own. But that can feel weird if you think about it. You have to have thick skin. I'm like, we're not all going to have the same opinions on nails. So be it. And I'm not going to feel personal about it. No. Yeah. And guess what? The person who said that is still around, still supports. This was like a year later. It's fine. Like, you don't have to let everything turn into something, I think is what I'm trying to say. And with random people who decide to come on your page and be weird or inappropriate, I do not engage. I'm a debater. I teach debate. I teach argumentation. You want to do that face to face? Like, let's go. I would love that. But online, it's never the place to do it because it's a weird landscape. You don't even know who you're arguing with most of the time. And to what end, right? Yeah. I don't need to convince them of anything. They're here by choice. They're disgruntled about something random that I'm sharing, then I don't respond because I think they're looking for a response. And so I'm very grateful to say I've had a very low drama page for 12 years for the most part. And you get a random thought or comment here or there, but really, and I hope this doesn't invite anything now, like, oh, she's challenging that. I will not engage, but I don't. And it's not because I'm afraid or I don't have a good comeback, but it's truly because it's an energy spend with no payoff. My time is too tight to want to just get in it with some. That's not fun for me. But you want to have a productive conversation face to face. Like, I welcome that. It's just never that's never the context.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you talked about energy because I agree always. And I think about this all the time in life, but definitely in content creation. When I'm talking to other creators, I'm constantly telling them, but like, where's your energy best spent? Whether that is it best spent in pitching or is it best spent in creating? Is it best spent in getting new PR or is it best spent connecting with community, right? Like constantly thinking you only have a certain amount of energy every single day. Where should it be prioritized? I think it's such an
so true,
interesting thing that people don't think about enough.
No, and that is the grand question daily for me. I wake up, if I've got a window of time, it's like, okay, am I opening boxes and shooting stories? Am I filming project deadlines, which obviously have to come first if I'm on contract for something?
Sure.
Am I filming for fun just because I never want to lose that joy of just sharing because I want to share?
Yep.
Am I showing up to something? Like all of that is a distinctive choice. And every day my prayer is like, okay, God, show me what needs to be done today. Because if I just go by my own intuition, it all feels important. And you sometimes, and I hate saying this, but it's true. Sometimes you feel that pull all over and you can just sit there and just scroll on your phone instead. And you're like, oh, an hour, just 2 hours just went by that I could have been doing all of this, but I couldn't decide. And now this has happened. And I hate that. So it doesn't happen often. And we all need a break now and then, obviously a break from being productive. But I do think that
For sure.
that inability to decide like, what's the priority for this moment? That's a challenge for us as humans. And I feel like I confront that daily. It's like, okay, let me just pray for what needs to happen today, right now, that I can feel good about by the time I go to bed.
Yeah. I had a business coach for a while that said, when it gets to that point, take a nap. And when you wake up, you'll know what to do. It's like the first thing that you then think of is like the thing is the thing. Go with that.
That's a good idea. Yeah. It's like a reset. Take a walk, go stand up.
Exactly.
Whatever it needs to be. Sometimes for me, it's just going outside in my backyard. The sun's out. I'll sit there for 10 minutes, kind of recharge. I'm like a reptile. I need sun.
Yeah.
So I go outside, I recharge, and I come in. I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go.
Yep.
I'm not too sweaty. I'm ready.
A California girl. She's ready. Recharged.
You know it. Need some sun.
I love it.
Yes.
And when it comes to long-term fans, long-term followers, how do you feel like you've been able to maintain long-term support?
Yes, it is for me, it's just about putting in the time to respond. And it never gets easier. And I don't mean it like I dread responding. I love the conversations I get to have online. They are the reason I have the business I have. But it's hard because you could spend all day on your phone just responding. And I left that actually out of those like lists of priorities. But one of those is responding to email, responding to comments, responding to DMs, responding to comments on YouTube, which is different than Instagram. I mean, there is a lot, but I think you need to make your audience feel seen because there's a certain point in people's careers where it was easy for me for the first half of my career, less followers, loyal. Those people are still with me today. But I've always been a responder as much as I can be. Sometimes you have to give yourself grace and go, I can't do it on this post, but I'll do it on the next 3 or whatever. And sometimes you miss a DM and then I get it later and I'm like, sorry, let me answer everything now. But by and large, putting in that time to respond is crucial.
Sure, absolutely.
And it's extremely time consuming to do that. It's like writing 100 emails or 200 emails, mini emails in the day. But these are the people that are there for you. So you have to, I want to, and then I need to engage and get back to people as much as I can. Sometimes I'm sending voice notes because I'm so tired of typing.
I love a voice note. I think it's an even better way to make a connection with someone is to hear their voice. I love sending a voice note to the community.
I voice note with people I've never met all the time. People have been with me forever. Yeah, it's great. We do it back and forth. So it's like an obvious answer, but I think it's the one that's hardest to follow through on. There's a point where people just stop responding to their followers because it's so overwhelming. And if it's relational, you can't. If they're people you have relationships with, I don't think that's ideal.
Yeah, 100%. And my last question, and before we get to your advice that I want you to give everyone is, how do you feel like your career as a professor and someone who's so well-versed in communication and, just outward expression has impressed your content creator journey? Do you feel like they've really helped each other? And are you still actively professing or are you?
I am.
Okay. Amazing.
Yes. I'm a full-time college professor. I teach 7 classes a semester.
Wow.
And I'm department chair. So I do a lot at the college and I'm grateful to do so. I'm on campus 2 full days a week. So
Wow.
full days. And
Mm-hmm.
then I do have some classes online, but 7 classes in total. And then I'm on campus usually another day for meetings or committee things.
Amazing. Mm-hmm.
But I feel like everything I ever learned and then proceeded to teach about communication, I get manifests in what I do in beauty on so many levels. Prior to being tenured, I was pretty reticent to discuss what I was doing in beauty with most people. My students might have known because sometimes they were beauty lovers and they would walk into class and be like, "Oh my gosh, you actually are a professor and I have your class." Like, are they following me on Instagram and they didn't realize I
Sure.
taught there? Because I don't really talk about where I teach, just
Yeah.
out of, it's not a
Safety
secret.
and
People know, but just,
sure.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I, but if people know, they know, it's not
Mm-hmm.
a secret. What I had a dean during my years of tenure who was really supportive. And I wouldn't say that was always the case. Sometimes I think prior to that, it was more like, "Oh, you write about lipstick, good for you." And academia didn't really understand, didn't understand the extent to which I was doing a whole nother career that was very much
Mm-hmm.
vital and multifaceted. But my dean at the time, I was going through tenure, it was a 4-year process. He was very supportive, really interested. He saw how I was like helping my students to get internships with amazing brands and contacts I had. Cause like I said, I love to make a connection where I can
Mm-hmm.
with people. And he, I think, helped me to kind of see, okay, just talk about it. It's fine,
Yeah.
and don't worry about it. But his support helped in that because I did work with people who were not as supportive, and it was better to
Sure.
just kind of stay in my lane
Mm-hmm.
for a while. And then now, I mean, everything that I experience when I'm not on the clock on campus in beauty, every PR email, every negotiation, every content creation moment, is stuff I teach in my classes. So the the overlap, I feel so grateful, so blessed to be able to kind of be free about that now.
Mm-hmm.
My worlds have converged very openly. And my students, I think, appreciate that too, because for a lot of them, this is a goal for them as
Yeah.
communication majors. So I can give them my best advice, and I do. And it's a really ideal situation. I work a lot,
Yeah.
like
You
sometimes
sure
18
do.
hours a day,
Uh-huh.
long days sometimes, but it's worth it. And there'll be one day if I live long where I'm going to be like, "Oh, I miss those days." So I'm living them now.
Sure. Oh, that's so
Yeah.
nice to hear. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much for everything, all of this information and guidance. And I would love for you to leave the listeners with just one final nugget of advice in terms of if they want to
Mhm.
get to, a longevity in career like you have, if they want to
Yes.
build the community like you have, what is some like little nuggets of wisdom that you'd love to leave for other creators?
Sure. I feel like what has guided me through a lot of this is a golden rule of creating and behaving.
Mhm.
So I did not make up the golden rule. Obviously, it was taught to me.
Mhm.
It's been around forever. My parents taught that to my brother and I. But the idea of create the content you want to see.
Mhm.
What will you enjoy? Create that use that as a start, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes you have to also take on other perspectives, and the brand has other expectations, and you have to find a workaround for all of it. But at a minimum,
Mhm.
create stuff that you would want to watch or listen to,
Yeah.
and your people will find you. Like, that's a simple kind of just get going. Don't
Mhm.
overthink things. Just do that. Come from, because you're really at that point, I'm distilling it down to starting from a basis of authenticity or being genuine. You're being your
Yeah.
genuine self, your authentic self. You're creating things you would enjoy. Other people who appreciate that will find you. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, and I said it earlier in our discussion, d- consistency is essential. So, however you can be consistent, be consistent.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean you have to upload 3 times a day. I mean, I congrats to those who can and do. I
So
see you.
true.
I'm always impressed, but
Mhm.
that's not my way. But when you are, give yourself a baseline. Like, I'm going to upload
Mhm.
wherever you're uploading twice a week or
Mhm.
3 times a week, and stick with it. Make yourself do it. And then finally, golden rule of behavior: put the time in to responding to your followers, responding to the people that are supporting you. Don't don't forget them in
Yeah.
the process. And I
Mhm.
think that happens. It's sad. I also see that on the brand front. Sometimes brands will have early supporters that give them all sorts of content and support. And as the brand grows, sometimes they forget the people that were supporting them at the
So true.
beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think it's a good rule of thumb. If you want to be that type of person that just has that golden rule behavior, then do it. And know that it's not always going to be reciprocated, but you can go through the process without regrets.
Mm-hmm. Great advice. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being a guest and taking your time. I know, as you mentioned, you're so busy, so I really appreciate it.
I really enjoyed our conversation. You asked amazing questions,
Oh,
and I feel like we could have done a whole nother hour if time had permitted. So
absolutely.
thank you.
Absolutely. No problem. And for everyone listening, I'm sure you already follow at Beauty Professor, but I will link all of Rachel's handles in the show notes so that you can make sure that you are following and subscribing to her YouTube channel. So we will talk to you guys next time.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.